Good morning, everyone. My name is Sterling Kiga, Chairperson of the Authority. I'd now like to call to order the December 3rd, 2025 public hearing of the Hawaii Community Development Authority. The time is now 9 a.m.
According to section 92-3.7 Hawaii revised statutes, the Hawaii Community Development Authority is holding today's public hearing virtually on Zoom. The Zoom link details were included on the meeting agenda. Therefore, members of the public or can join us on Zoom and also at our physical meeting site at the American Brewery Building, 547 Queen Street, second floor boardroom, Honolulu, 96813. The HCDA communication staff is hosting this meeting. Once this meeting begins, everyone will be muted for clear audio. Board members, if you have any comments or questions, please unmute yourselves to speak. It is important that all individuals clearly state their name, pseudonym, or other identifier name each time prior to speaking. If you wish to provide oral testimony and you are attending virtually, please indicate so by clicking the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen. If you are attending in person, you'll be called to the front of the room in the order that you signed up. Before you begin your testimony, we ask that you identify yourself and spell your name for the record. Your testimony must be related to an item on the agenda. All testimony be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. When time has elapsed, time will be called out, after which you will have 30 seconds to conclude your testimony, and then your audio will be turned off. If you're attending in person, the presiding officer will call the next testifier. Keep in mind that this is an opportunity to share your thoughts with us. If you ask questions during your testimony, neither the board nor the staff is required to provide an answer. If the authority's connection for the remote meeting is lost, the meeting will be recessed until the connection is restored. The connection cannot be restored within 30 minutes. The hearing will be reconvened on Thursday, December 4th, 2025 at 9 a.m. at the same physical location and virtual Zoom link as today's hearing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. HCDA board members, please remain visible and audible during the meeting. Also, please acknowledge you are present by either saying here or present. Let the record reflect that the following members are present. Vice Chair Ishii.
Here.
Thank you. Secretary Lidstone.
Ew.
Thank you. Member Miranda Johnson.
Here.
Thank you. Member Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. Member Evans is excused. Member Streitz.
Here.
Thank you. And Member Gordner.
Here.
We have
Thank you.
Chair Corp.
Perfect. For today's meeting, board members will have an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments after an agenda item has been presented, and individuals from the public who have requested to provide verbal public testimony on a specific agenda item are on standby and will be permitted to provide testimony respectively. Would counsel for the applicant make their appearances at this time?
Yes, good morning, Chair Giga, members of the authority, Executive Director Nakamoto, and HCDA staff. Brian Kang and Kendrick Chang appearing on behalf of Gentry Kaulu LLC.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. The legal basis and purpose, today's hearing is being convened under the provisions of chapters 15-215, the Kailua Community Development District Rules, and 15-219, Rules of Practice and Procedure, Hawaii Administrative Rules, and section 206E-5.6 Hawaii Revised Statutes to consider the following matter. The applicant is Gentry Kaulu LLC. The development permit application number is KAL 25-010. The project is Kaulu. The tax map keys are Oahu tax map keys 9-1-193 001 002 009 010 011 013 014 015 16 017 018 019 020 021 022 023 024 025 026 027 028 029 030 031 and 032 and 033 and Oahu tax map key 9-1-013 198. The project location is between Roosevelt Avenue, Kopahe Avenue, Boxer Road, and Kamopila Boulevard. The description under a development permit KL 21-005 that was originally approved in February 2022, the applicant is constructing a 390 unit residential project on an approximately 29 acre site along Roosevelt Avenue between Copahay Avenue and Kamakilo Boulevard. The applicant proposes to amend its development permit to utilize pre-existing reserve housing credits for approximately 46 out of the 88 required units in the reserve housing program for the project. In addition, the applicant also intends to use dwelling unit revolving fund equity program for designated units within the project. Legal notice. A public hearing notice was published in the Honolulu Star Bulletin, Maui News, the Garden Isle, Hawaii Tribune Herald, and West Hawaii Today on October 30th, 2025. Chair.
Thank you. Let me briefly explain our procedures for today's public hearing. First, HCDA staff will present its report summarizing the applicant's request. Following that presentation, we'll receive the presentation of the applicant and then testimony from the public. Only members of the HCDA authority and the executive director will be permitted to ask questions of the staff, applicant, intervener, or individuals providing testimony. I will be acting as the presiding officer for this hearing. Are there any questions as to our procedures? Seeing none, in accordance with HAR 15-219-49, interested persons were provided an opportunity to intervene to participate as a party in this hearing by submitting a written request to HCDA by 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. For the record, there were no such motions to intervene received by HCDA for the Kaulu application. We will now begin our proceedings. HCDA's Director of Planning and Development, Ryan Tam, will now present the staff report. Mr. Ryan Tam.
Good morning, Chair and board members. You do have the staff report in your packets, so I will try to keep this summary brief. I would also like to acknowledge the hard work of our staff on this amendment, including John Hewin with Assistant Deepak and the rest of the team. Again, the applicant is requesting to amend its existing development permit, KAL 21-005 for the Kaulu by Gentry project in order to use 57,243 square feet of pre-existing reserve housing credits to partially meet its reserved housing requirement for the project. The applicant also wants to use a Hawaii Housing Finance Development Corporation dwelling unit revolving fund equity pilot program, or DEP, to finance designated reserve housing units within the project. The applicant is going to provide more information about the project, but generally has about 130 homes, which have been sold to date, including 19 reserve housing units. So I think they'll have updated numbers. Another 29 units have not been sold, including 15 reserve housing units. The applicant indicates that the sale of reserve housing units has been slower than expected, including factors such as higher mortgage rates, greater competition of supply, and increased carrying costs. The applicant is requesting to use 57,243 square feet of pre-existing reserve housing credits to convert some of its on-site reserve housing units to market rate units. Again, we did have a typo in pages 3 and 4 of our staff report, but the number is 57,243. In Kaulu, the square footage is equivalent to 46 of the 88 reserve housing units, which are currently incorporated into the project. After the housing credits are used, a total of 42 reserve housing units will be provided on site within the project. The applicant is proposing to enter into agreement with Waikea Garden Apartments, LLC, a Hunt Hawaii affiliate, for the purchase of 57,243 square feet of pre-existing reserve housing credits. Waikea Garden Apartments has a total of 100 one-bedroom reserve housing units and opened in July 2015. It was developed under Plan Development Permit number KAL-14-001. DNO number 4, decision and order number 4 of this permit allows reserve housing credits more than the required 15% for the project to be allowed to be transferred to other projects in Kalailoa or elsewhere on Oahu. The applicant also intends to use the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation dwelling unit revolving fund equity pilot program towards 4 of the unsold units within the project as a financial incentive for prospective reserve housing buyers. This was approved by HHFDC in September 2025. Since the reserve housing floor area is exempt from public facilities dedication, the conversion of reserve housing to market rate units will require a public facilities dedication of approximately 19,851 square feet. The applicant had originally committed to set aside 18,957 square feet in land for the future widening of Saratoga Avenue and Roosevelt Avenue. Since the applicant's original PFD was more than the required amount, the applicant would now be liable for approximately 293 square feet of PFD under the proposed amendment. The applicant does not propose any changes to the physical design of the project and indicates that the originally determined compliance are still valid. This concludes our report. Subject to questions and all.
Thank you, Mr. Rantam. Members, do we have any questions on the staff report? Seeing no questions from members on the staff report, we'll proceed now to receive the exhibits to the record. And now, counsel for the applicant, please describe the exhibits that you wish to have admitted.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Gentry moves to admit exhibits 1 through 4, as indicated in its exhibit list filed on November 21st, 2025. And Gentry also requests, pursuant to Administrative Rule 91-10, subsection 4, that HCA take official notice of the record and file in the original proceeding for this matter, which was KAL 21-004.
Great, thank you. Members, do you have any objections to the exhibits being offered by the applicant? Does the executive director have any objections to the exhibits being offered by the applicant?
Chair, none.
Hearing no objections, the applicant's exhibits 1 through 4 are admitted to the record, along with the records related to the previous approval of the project. Will you be establishing any of your witnesses as experts in the subject area?
No.
Okay. Members, do you have, well, hearing no objections, keep moving. You may now call your first witness.
Thank you very much, Chair. The Gentry calls Andrew Kamikawa as its first witness.
Thank you. Andrew, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you provide is the truth? Yes. Thank you. Counsel?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Kamikawa, can you please state your full name for the record?
My name is Andrew Kabikawa.
And where do you work?
I work at Gentry Homes Limited, which is the parent company of the applicant, Gentry Kaulu LLC.
And what is your current title?
My title is Vice President and Chief Financial Officer.
And what has been your role in preparing the application for the amendment for this project?
My role has been as the primary individual responsible for planning, preparing, and coordinating all aspects of the amendment being considered by the board.
And to step back briefly, it's been a couple of years since the project itself has been before the board. Can you just please give us a very brief history of Gentry's history and experience in residential development?
Sure. Gentry is a locally based and family-owned company that was founded in 1968. Gentry has been developing homes in Hawaii for over 57 years. We are a vertically integrated developer that has extensive experience in planning, designing, constructing, marketing, and selling homes in Hawaii. Our most well-known projects have been the master plan communities of Ewa by Gentry and YPO by Gentry. In total, we have developed over 14,000 homes in Hawaii.
And what segment of the residential market does Gentry typically focus on?
Gentry focuses on building homes for working Hawaii residents, primarily in the Ewa Plain region. We have all of our home buyers sign a 1-year owner-occupant affidavit, not because we're required to, but because that is what we believe in. It was important to our founder, Tom Gentry, to build homes for individuals living and working in Hawaii. We have built thousands of single-family homes, single-family detached condominiums, and moderate density multifamily homes.
And how does Kaulu fit within Gentry's focus?
It very much fits within Gentry's focus, which is building homes for working Hawaii families.
And is it fair to say that Gentry, as part of its development, marketing, et cetera, has knowledge and expertise with respect to data and trends relating to the Oahu residential real estate market?
Yes, residential real estate is a very local business. Trends and data at the state level may vary, quite a bit from the continental US. Likewise, each area of Hawaii is unique and have different residential, real estate data and trends. For instance, Metro Honolulu is a very different market from the Ewa Plain market.
And is it also fair to say that Gentry monitors and has knowledge and expertise with respect to how data and trends relating to the Oahu residential real estate market affect the marketing and sales of Gentry projects?
Yes, we monitor the developments within the area very closely. We work with lenders, appraisers, brokers, contractors, and other stakeholders in the area to monitor these data and trends.
And does Gentry have experience in residential development in the area surrounding Kaulu?
Yes, our Ewa by Gentry master plan community is directly adjacent to Kalailoa. Additionally, we have developed over 500 homes for the Department of Hawaiian Homelands in their Kanihili and Kaulu Okaha'i subdivisions, which are directly located in Kapolei and Ewa Beach, respectively.
And does Gentry also have knowledge and expertise with respect to data and trends relating to other developers and existing inventory within the Ewa Plain?
Yes, there's only a few, larger type residential home builders in the area. So we, communicate with them and do research to understand what they're doing as well.
Chair Giga, with your permission, Mr. Kamikawa will now present a slide presentation and present some additional information about the amendment. And this is marked as Exhibit 3 to Gentry's exhibit.
Great. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Good morning, Chair Giga, Executive Director Nakamoto, and staff and guests. I wanted to briefly summarize our Kaulu by Gentry project for you. It is located on the far northwest portion of the Kalailoa Community Development District, the KCDD. It's next to the brand new Daniel Kahikina Akaka VA Clinic and also Barbers Point Elementary School. The project consists of 390 homes, 128 of which are single family and 262 of which are multifamily. And the whole project is being developed as a condominium property regime. The staff report outlines the timeline of the project. I just want to show you a brief aerial shot of the undeveloped land from 2019 to where it is now as the thriving community with 136 residents living in Kaulu as of October 31st, 2025. The homes currently marketed at Kaulu, the pricing is shown below. Our market multifamily homes are priced between $703,000 to $785,000, while our reserve housing multifamily homes are priced from $610,000 to $685,000. As of the end of October, we have released 171 units for sale, 36 of which 36 are reserve housing units. Currently, we have 15 reserve housing units available for sale, which are completed or nearly completed. I would like to highlight that all 136 of the homes closed as of October 31st, 2025, in addition to the reserved housing units, which have their 5-year regulated term, all the market homes were sold to buyers who signed a 1-year owner-occupant affidavit. And based on our review of the MLS and our understanding of the market, there have been no resales in the community to date. Also, no units appear to be rented out as investment properties. So we are not able to develop the project as fast as desired due to having to manage our cash flow and the financial difficulties associated with the increasing level of unsold reserved housing units. The reserved housing credits we are requesting to use at Kaulu have been earned within the KCDD district and will be used within the KCDD district at some point in time. Next, I'd like to describe why are we having difficulty selling the reserved housing units. Overall, the real estate market has been sluggish. Over the past 3 years, the overall Hawaii real estate market has generally seen a slowdown in volume, prices, and demand. Costs have continued to increase, however, And that's exclusive of tariff risks, which are still hanging over us as a significant risk. Additionally, interest rates have stayed higher for longer than expected. Beginning in 2022, the Fed began to make interest rate hikes. Long-term mortgage interest rates followed and increased dramatically. In October of 2023, per Freddie Mac, the 30-year rate peaked at 7.79%, which was the highest it has been in over 20 years, since the year 2000. This was unfortunately kind of coincided with our November 2023 model opening of Kaulu. And interest rates have remained elevated and have been between 6 and 7% throughout 2025. And next, we're going to touch upon that there has been significant competition from unrestricted resales and the new development market. And also kind of illustrate that reserved housing restrictions and rules originally developed for Kaka'ako do not quite reflect the market in Kalailo. So going back to the competition from the existing inventory and new developments like Ho'opili are building lots of multifamily homes. For instance, Ho'opili has two projects, Alana and Kapili, which have 187 and 300 multifamily units respectively. These homes do not have any restrictions or regulated term and are at price levels comparable to Ku'ulu's reserved housing units. Additionally, the resale market in the Ewa Plain has many homes priced below 140% AMI. Other Ho'opili communities from DR Horton, homes Gentry has built in the Ewa by Gentry community and homes built by Haseko in the Ocean Point communities all provide competition to Kaulu. So this available inventory at AMI is between 80% to 140% in the Ewa Plain with no restrictions is hindering sales of Kaulu's reserved housing units, despite our below market pricing, our generous incentives and our marketing efforts. Next, I would like to illustrate how reserved housing restrictions and rules originally developed for Kaka'ako do not reflect the market in Kalaeloa. Here are some figures based on MLS data for condominiums year-to-date through October 31st, 2025. So you can see within Kaka'ako, 80% of units are priced above 140% AMI, and only 20% are priced below 140% AMI. Conversely, only 22% of units in the Ewa Plain are priced above 140% AMI, and 78% of the units are priced below 140% AMI. Also, the median and average prices of homes in Kaka'ako are significantly higher than the Ewa Plain, even though the homes are actually smaller in Kaka'ako than in the Ewa Plain. The AMI of a medium-priced home in Kaka'ako is approximately 196%, while the AMI of a medium-priced unit in the Ewa Plain is approximately 128%. And thus far, our AMI range for our Kaulu reserved units have ranged from 119 to 132%. So as you can see, since a typical unit in Ewa sells for less than 140% AMI, buyers will seek out units without restrictions. So in Kaka'ako, a unit at 140% AMI is very desirable, and those units need to be, reserved for workforce housing. Otherwise, those units would be sold for much higher or bought by, investors. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So what we're asking for in this amendment to our development permit. So the reserve housing requirement for Kaulu, which is based on residential floor area, is 20%, which amounts to 106,158 square feet. So Gentry is proposing to partially fulfill its reserve housing requirement by applying the 57,243 square feet of existing reserve housing floor area credits generated by the Wakea Garden Apartments project in Kalaeloa. These credits have been earned in the KCDD and will eventually be used in the district. The remaining reserve housing requirement will be fulfilled by the sale of approximately 49,525 square feet of residential floor area, which represents approximately 42 homes. So next, just from an illustrative standpoint, this is our site plan, which illustrates the dispersion of our original 88 reserve housing units. And this next proposed site plan reflects the 42 reserve units dispersed throughout the site. Gentry would like to give you a brief update on how the Wakea Garden Apartment reserve housing credits were created. So to our knowledge, the HCDA master plan, adopted in 2006, the Wakia Garden Apartments and Cloudbreak's Hale Uhivai Nalu rental project are two of the residential projects completed within the KCDD. Both were adaptive reuse projects of existing buildings. Kaulu is the first for sale new development in the history of KCDD. So the project, the Wakia Garden project was, as Ryan mentioned, approved in 2014 and welcomed residents in 2015. Wakia is right down the street from Kaulu and has been close to 100% occupied over the past several years. So utilizing these existing reserve housing credits for Kaulu ensures that Kalailoa will continue to retain the benefit of the reserved housing floor area within the community while enabling more efficient use of resources to enable the continued provision of housing for local families. Since opening our model in late 2023, we have engaged in various marketing efforts. These include targeted marketing efforts just for the reserved housing units. We also offered incentives beyond what is in our reserved housing program. We're offering an increased closing credit of up to 4%, which could be up to $27,400. This next slide is just an example ad, print and digital ad that was in the Star Advertiser and other publications. So next, another incentive that we're looking to incorporate into Kaulu is the HHFDC Dwelling Unit Revolving Fund, their Equity Pilot Program, or DEP program. We want to provide some background just on the overall program. It provides buyers with an attractive 0% 30-year second mortgage, so it greatly reduces the buyer's monthly payments. Gentry applied for the use of the DEP program with the HHFDC and was approved for $247,000 to be used on 4 units. The DEP program can be used on only 2-bed and 2-bath units, which are only a small portion of our Kaulu reserved housing units. So using this funding, may help some of our reserved housing units. However, use will be limited to just the 4 units at this point. So mahalo for your consideration of the proposed amendments. I'll be open for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kamapala. Before we get into any questions from the board, I have a few follow-up questions for you.
Sure.
You mentioned that the Kaulu reserve housing units have been set at an AMI of between 119 and 132% AMI, and that AMI is consistent with Gentry's reserve housing program for this project. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is Gentry familiar with the types and combinations of marketing and incentives that are typically effective to stimulate sales at its projects?
Yes. Every project is different, and Gentry tailors its marketing efforts to kind of match the target buyer group.
And how do the marketing and incentive efforts at Kaulu for those reserve housing units compare with Gentry's marketing and incentive efforts for its other projects?
Yeah, the efforts we put into the Kaulu reserved housing program has been more robust than any other Gentry project, probably in well over 10 years. For instance, that 4% closing credit incentive is pretty much the highest that mortgage lenders will allow.
And you also discussed the HHFDC program. In terms of that program, does HCD have any administrative responsibilities with respect to implementing that program for those units?
No, it's anticipated Gentry and HHFDC will manage all the administrative aspects of the program.
Thank you. And assuming the board approves this request, will Gentry return to the board to request documentation of the DERF program into Gentry's reserve housing program for Kaulu?
Yes.
Now, turning to the revised compliance table, I think you had it as part of your presentation, and this is Appendix A to that Exhibit 3. It states that the project will continue to comply with the public facilities dedication requirement for the project, and that's 16,961 square feet plus a credit, through a combination of the constructed reserve housing units as well as the application of the credit. How is Gentry calculating the public facilities dedication requirement in light of the use of the credits from Wakia Garden?
Yeah, because Wakia Garden Apartments was an improvement project of an existing building that did not increase the existing floor area by more than 25%. The KCDD rules do not require a public facilities dedication for that project. So as such, because we are using the credits, we are applying the reserve housing credits from Wakea Gardens to Kaulu. We have used it to apply to the floor area at Kaulu for the purposes of calculating the public facilities dedication.
Thank you. Let me ask you this. Gentry has already constructed, it has available 15 reserve housing units at Kaulu now. Since those units are already constructed, why can't Gentry simply hold these units, until the interest rates go back down, the inventory is reduced in the Evo Plain, the housing market recovers, which historically will likely happen at some point in the future?
Yeah, the housing market is not always linear and very hard to predict. So we feel that it's much better, for the local housing market, that these units do not sit empty and are occupied by working Hawaii residents. So the financial difficulties of holding these units have been impacting our overall schedule of Kaulu.
And turning to that schedule, what is the impact on Gentry if it is not permitted to use the reserve housing credit or area credits and is required to maintain and incur those costs of those already constructed reserve housing?
Yeah, we feel it could, maybe double the timeline of the project. It has kind of significantly slowed down our production schedule from our construction teams. We anticipated to be about over 2/3 complete with the project at this time, but we are currently less than half complete with the project.
And has the number of sales of the reserve housing units to this point, because some were sold, but 15 remain, how has the sales at this point affected the Kaulu project schedule?
Yeah, so we're much behind. Like I said, we wanted to be about 2/3 complete, but we're only about 1/2 complete with the project. Yeah, our absorption rate of the reserved housing units have been close to less than one per month, which is much less than we originally anticipated.
Let me refer you to a section of the Colorado Reserve Housing Rules. This is section 15-216-17, subsection J. I won't quote it, but it essentially states that the board has the authority in its sole discretion to suspend, the requirement for reserve housing in Colorado law if it would negatively impact, the primary objective to promote redevelopment within the community. Are you familiar with that provision? Yes. And Gentry is proposing to use the credits from Wakea Garden. Why is it using the credits instead of requesting the board to perhaps consider suspending the requirement for the reserve housing unit for this project?
Yeah, Gentry's desire is to complete the project and fulfill our commitments, in accordance with the KCDD rules without asking for that type of suspension. And use of the credits from Wakea Gardens is allowed by the rules. So that's our desire.
And if Gentry is permitted to fulfill the reserve housing floor area requirements, partially by using the credits, and the existing already constructed reserve housing units, those 15 units are offered for sale as market units. What does Gentry currently anticipate would be the approximate price for those market units?
We anticipate the sales prices to increase maybe between 3% and 4%, which would mean, approximately $20,000 to $25,000 more. And this pricing level, we anticipate to be close, if not below 140% AMI. So it's not like we're not converting these units to luxury units or changing any finishing or design of the units.
Thank you. Let me switch gears very briefly. The Department of Transportation submitted a comment letter to HCDA regarding this application that's dated November 19, 2025. You reviewed that letter, correct?
Yes.
And the letter refers to comment numbers 1 through 5 in DOT's comment letter for the original project. Will Gentry continue to abide by the requests that DOT made in that original comment letter?
Yes.
And will Gentry continue to abide by an navigation easement that the DOT references in that letter?
Yes.
The Office of Hawaiian Affairs also submitted a comment email to HCDA regarding this application that's dated November 18, 2025. You've reviewed that email, is that right?
Yes.
And OHA's email notes its concern about using the credits. What is Gentry's response to OHA's comment?
Yeah, because the credits from Okea Gardens were generated within the KCDD, they are preserving reserve housing or affordable housing within the district. Gentry will not be converting these units to luxury units, and we're not changing any of the finishes, like I mentioned, and they are going to continue to be sold to North Hawaii residents.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kamikawa. Chair Higa, Mr. Kamikawa is available for any questions.
Thank you, Council. Members or Executive Director Nakamoto, do you have any questions for the witness? Member Strauss.
Could you, I'm assuming you have some background in the Waikea development, as it's an affiliate, but could you, I guess, elaborate on how those credits came to be? Were those intended to help finance the affordability of that project?
Well, we're not affiliate of Fund, but yeah, sorry, can you restate the question?
So they have excess credits.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if those excess credits were, I guess, built into their model to finance the affordability of their project.
Yeah.
Chair, maybe, or Member Strikes, maybe we can sort of explain that, or you clarify that, Ryan, or
Yeah, I take a stab at it.
yeah.
So again, the Waikea Gardens Apartments, it was a former bachelor's office quarters over the base. They converted, there were 200 units originally, as part of this officers quarters housing. They were converted into 100 units. I guess 100 one bedroom units. And the requirement as part of that development permit project was at 15, because it's a rental project, 15% of the units had to be for reserve housing for a period of 15 years. Because they had excess housing, so in that 85 units excess, they were able to use that as they were allowed as part of the DNO. Hunt was allowed, given the discretion, to sell those credits or use them for other developments. So it wasn't necessarily part of that project, but I think the intention, I can assume that the intention was to use that for other projects.
So I think
Yeah.
Member Strikes, I think, to summarize it, I think when the HUD affiliate, developed or, reconstructed the bachelor quarters, essentially they overbuilt or over provided, reserve housing, overbuilt, over providing. So when they over provided, that square footage became reserve housing credits that under the DNO for Waikea Gardens, it could be transferred either within the district or outside the district. So
Right. No, I understand that. My question was more along the lines of, did they provide those additional units because of the credit? Were they able to only do that because of the credit? And, intending to get, some compensation through sale of the credits?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think we'd be able to speculate on that.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, Member Strikes.
Yeah, Member Straits, I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, so just to clarify, so Gentry is not an affiliate of the Waikea Gardens entity that developed this, so yeah, I don't think we have any knowledge with respect to that.
Okay, well, I'll come back to that later in the discussion. However, Yeah.
Members, any other comments or questions for? Member Lidstone.
Mahalo. I'm thinking about long-term affordability in Kalailoa, and I'm wondering how reducing on-site reserve housing supports the long-term affordability needs of Kalailoa residents.
Well, I think the Wokai Garden project is, less than a mile away from the Kaulu project. So it is within the Kailua Community Development District.
What I guess what I'm saying is because you're reducing on-site reserve housing, right? So when you look at the Kalailoa's long-term redevelopment and housing goals, I'm just wondering how this decreasing of or what because in essence it's going to decrease affordability units. Is that correct? Reserve housing unit.
No, the credits were generated within the district. And for the remaining 42, proposed reserve housing units within Kaulu, we're continuing to try and spread them out across the project site, so they all have equitable access to, any of the amenities like the parks and the units are within the same building of the market units. So we are trying to have the reserve housing units, distributed across the site plan.
If I could, Member Lidstone, I think the long term is actually these units were developed 10 years ago. And as part of that, the credits were then created. So the affordable housing has actually already been created 10 years ago. And now the credits for that affordable housing can be used to satisfy other requirements within the district. So affordable housing was actually overbuilt 10 years ago relative to the KCDD inclusionary zoning rules.
Sure. Excuse me if I may. I think another way to think about it is with regards to the long term, the reserve housing program, for sale reserve housing program, there's a duration, there's essentially a time limit when the units are to remain in the reserve housing program.
Regulated term.
A regulated term, exactly. So once that regulated term, which I believe is 5 years currently in Kalailoa, once that regulated term ends, the units can be sold at the market rates. For the rental housing and for the reserve units are in the rental housing program, such as at Waikea Gardens, the regulated term is 15 years. So for 15 years, the units have to be rented at the reserve unit rates.
Member Ludson, does that answer?
Sort of.
We'll go to Member Anderson and then we can go to Member Schreiss. Member Anderson.
Thank you. So in talking to people at work who are renters, I've encouraged them to look at these reserve housing programs. And they've given me the opinion, which I was surprised that it doesn't represent a better value than market rate units, given all of the additional commitments and paperwork you have to do. And that really surprised me. And I was wondering if we're seeing that sentiment here where the reserve housing unit, even though it has a lower price, the customer is not perceiving it as a better value than the market. I wonder if you could comment on that.
Yeah, that is kind of what we are seeing as well, because because the market in general in the EVA plane is within the same AMI bandwidths as the reserve housing requirements. Yeah, we're finding that buyers are reluctant to take on the regulated term and shared equity rather than just trying to find a market unit. So that's why it has been so difficult for us.
You, Member Anderson, Member Schritz.
Okay, I guess I'll just circle back to what I was bringing up before, because I think from what I understand from Secretary Lindstone, I have the same concern. So I think it's an issue with the credit system not resulting in a net gain of affordable units as it would stand right now, because you're asking for purchasing credits, which results in a reduction of affordable units in the district. And I know that they're credits, so they, were overbuilt, but were those credits helping to finance those units, I guess is my question, if they wouldn't have otherwise happened. And so I'm just trying to like piece together how, this is helping the overall affordability of the district. Or because I know you mentioned as well the suspension of the rules, and I think what might also fit along those lines is to allow for a deeper affordability of the reserved units for additional credit of those units. And that results in a net gain of affordable units versus purchasing credits.
Yeah, I mean, I believe city rules have like, if you go lower, you can do less, or it's kind of weighted in terms of how you fulfill the requirements. But yeah, I was just gonna say that I think I'd be speculating to see if it impacted, Hunt's underwriting of their redevelopment project.
Member Schreitz, if I can just comment briefly, the DNO for the Waikea Gardens project is an exhibit 4. And just to note that the DNO doesn't address it or doesn't indicate whether the credits were intended, as for financing for the project. So I'll just note that.
Chair, if I may.
Please.
So I want to try to make sure I understand this, Mr. Kamikawa. So by asking for these, by trying to use these credits for these units to convert them to market, what you're essentially trying to do is to facilitate getting these converted units in, make it easier to get it into the marketplace, to make it attractive to buyers. So is that what your intent is?
Yeah, we want to when these reserved units, when they convert to market, they'll still be moderately priced, and we just want to provide more housing for the community.
So I have a follow-up question then. Do you think they're still going to be attractive, given that, as you said, that some of these market units that reserve housing units that you convert, you're going to be increasing the pricing by about 3 or 4%. Do you still think it's going to be attractive to buyers?
We do. I mean, just overall, the market has been a little sluggish, prior to the interest rate hikes, most of the time we'd be selling out of all of our products, market products. And even for our market rate multifamily units right now, it's very, it's difficult. We do have to, they've been, taking longer to sell, been on the market for longer. So we still have challenges, but we feel that those units, when they are converted to market, yeah, we will be able to absorb them.
So you're confident that even with the increase in pricing, you can sell these converted units?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Executive Director, Member Gordner, your question.
Thank you, Chair. First, I have a couple of clarifying questions for staff. The first is something I didn't see in any of the documentation. This project is on a T3, TMKs that are zoned for T3. What is the maximum FAR allowed for this project, and how does the 530,000 roughly compare?
Member Gardner, I would have to get back to you on that. I do know that this falls under the 2012 rules. And so it's not FAR based, it's not based on floor area ratio. I think there are different types of zoning requirements in terms of the amount of building or T3.
Okay, we can take that for the decision-making hearing. And then my other question for staff, which may require a little bit of background as well, is there any difference in the process and the implications under our current set of rules versus the ones that we intend to adopt or that we'll be voting on soon for the plan and rules update?
Offhand again, I can maybe qualify this during the hearing. But generally, this type of development, I think the form of it would be consistent with what is allowed under T3, both in terms of the single family homes and the multifamily homes. And
okay, thank you.
So.
And then my two questions for our guests today. One is, could you explain the rationale for approaching HHFDC for only 4 units for the DEP program as opposed to, say, the full balance that are unsold?
Yeah, so one piece of that is that the HHFDC, the DEP program, from my understanding, is that it's intended for starter homes, and for them, they defined a starter home, kind of thinking more like in Honolulu, region, and they said that a starter home is typically at max a 2-bedroom, about 1 bath home, whereas we kind of described to them that in the EVA plane that a 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit essentially is a starter home. And I think their intent is that they want to recycle the funds. So they want it to be a starter home where they may live in it for, maybe 3 to 7 years, and then they'll be able to get back those funds and redeploy it. So because we have mostly 3-bedroom units, we're not able to get more DEP program funding from HHFDC at this time. And then my understanding is that they're trying to distribute their funding. They have limited funds, right, as well, and distributing it across multiple projects. So they determined that to kind of test out the program with us with only 4 units was what they were willing to provide us.
Okay. And on that note, am I correct in my reading that in applying these credits for this floor area, you would not only be reducing the number of reserved housing units, but you would also be reducing the number of bedrooms in the remaining ones to be built? Did I read that right in the tables, that the remaining ones would go from 3-bedroom to 2-bedroom units?
No. We're not switching out any of the original 88 reserved housing units with like other plan types or anything. It's just we are using the credits to reduce, a portion of the approximately 46 units.
Member Gardner, any more questions?
My final question is, what alternatives have you considered or are you considering in the event that you cannot or do not use affordable housing credits for this project? What are the alternative courses of action?
Yeah, it it would be slowing down our construction schedule, just because we need to, manage our finances. So we'd be slowing down production of homes at Kaulu.
Members or executive director, any other questions for this witness?
Chair, sorry, just have one clarifying point,
Please.
if I may. So, Mr. Kamikawa, in addition to, coming back to the board in February to, reflect the use of, the debt program, in the reserve housing program for Gentry by Kaulu, you also intend to come back and reflect the change in, the on-site, reserve housing that's provided.
Yes, I mean, substantially, the incentives we're providing, the all the general terms of the reserve housing program will remain intact, but yeah, we will come to make those amendments to reflect the changing units.
The other question, I just wanted some clarification. I know you have, Gentry has a position on the PFD, as do we, but I'm assuming that despite that position, you still want this amendment, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, and the imposition of the PFD, this additional PFD requirement is something Gentry can agree to.
I think it's something we can discuss further. Yeah.
Discuss further, or you can agree to before the decision we can.
If it comes, I mean, if it's something that's part of the DNO, then I think we'll highly consider it.
Okay, just asking because it sounds like you have a position. I think the final thing is, as Brian mentioned, so these units, the reserve housing units have a regulated term on it, right? And if they're proposed to be sold, is there a shared equity on these that's payable to ACD?
The reserve housing units, yes, there's.
So because this is being converted to market units, do you intend to make that shared equity payment to ECDA?
For the units that we're converting to
Yes.
market, no.
Why not?
We were just our stance is that because we're using credits that have already been generated in the district, that wouldn't be fair to take additional shared equity from market units.
Understand your position, but I think that's something that we have to discuss.
Members or executive director, any more questions?
Thank you, Chair.
I just have one, Mr. Kamikawa. There's a slide in your presentation that's a comparison of the Kaka'ako market to EVA market, which is included in the packet in Exhibit 3. And could you just confirm for me, it looks like there are a lot more above 140% AMI units in Kaka'ako than there are in Kalailoa, is that right?
Correct.
And the reserved housing rules seem to be better suited for that kind of distribution of AMI ranges. Is that your position?
Correct. Yes.
Got it. And the reserved housing rules being imposed on Kalailoa may inadvertently be limiting the production of this sort of workforce 80 to 140% AMI housing. Is that also your position?
Yes.
Maybe affecting not only the sale, but the production of these units?
Yes.
Got it. And at least for Gentry's case, it is affecting both the sale and the production of the units.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Members, if there are no more questions for the witness, we will release this witness. And Mr. Kang, do you have any further witnesses to call?
Judge has no further.
Great, thank you so much. We will now proceed to public testimony. Since the notice of the public hearing was published on Thursday, October 30th, 2025, and written testimony invited, as of today, the HCDA has received 7 written testimonies, 2 in support and 5 for comments only. We will now take verbal public testimony, and we have 2 people pre-signed up to testify. So speakers will be called upon to testify in the order in which they have signed up, and testimony will be limited to 3 minutes each. We'll now welcome our first testifier. When you are called, please clearly state your name and any organization that you're representing. The first person signed up is Rusty Rasmussen.
Yes.
Good morning and thank you, Chair Higa, Executive Director Nakamoto, members of the board. My name is Rusty Rasmussen. I'm the Senior Vice President in charge of home loans at Central Pacific Bank. I've been working directly in the mortgage banking business here in Hawaii for over 40 years, and I do have extensive experience working with affordable for sale projects like Kaulu by Gentry in Kalailoa. I support the project amendments presented in Development Permit Application KAL 25010. The challenges for first-time buyers on Oahu have only increased over the past few years due to higher sales prices, a higher rate environment, higher ancillary costs such as insurance, taxes, and maintenance fees, and of course, a shortage of inventory. At certain AMI income levels and price points, it is very difficult to find a buyer able to qualify for both the HCDA program and a mortgage to finance it. They may make too much money to qualify under HCDA income limits, but cannot qualify for a mortgage to buy. The result is a completed move-in ready home sitting vacant for years. The direct opposite of the intention of these programs. And it seems like these project amendments make sense to address this issue. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Rasmussen. Thank you. We will now call up the next. Are there any other people in person wishing to testify before we go online? Okay, we'll now welcome Kieran Polk online.
Ms. Polk. Kieran?
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me? I'm trying to get my camera on, sorry.
Please proceed. You're all good.
Okay. My name is Karen Polk, and I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Kapolei Chamber of Commerce. And I did submit written testimony late. However, I wanted to orally testify in support of this amendment. Just like to comment, yesterday I had a luncheon with, the topic was affordable housing with a panel with several of our leaders on the West Side, including D.R. Horton, Kobayashi, James Campbell, and La Lima. And, in the market that, there's been a lot of discussion today about the market, and in the market that we are at, some of the topics that were brought up in that panel included affordability, of course, front and center, but also collaboration. And with that collaboration, there is understandably a need for the competition to adjust and do things in this market to make it affordable. But at the end of the day, these reserved housing units being held off the market will rise our construction costs. And that's another element that has an impact on our affordability. And so I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention and really focus on that, because it's all collaborative together, but at the same time, we have to look at what's going to project forward. And if we, prolong this project, there's other elements in the greater community that are involved. So we support this amendment. I appreciate the time and opportunity to allow me to testify. And I thank you kindly.
Great. Thank you to the testifier. Do we have any other people signed up to testify in person or online? Any persons wishing to testify? Oh, one more. Robert Garces. Robert, we should be enabling you to testify now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Jensen Garces. I'm a real estate broker with Coldwell Banker Realty in Hawaii. I currently lead a team that specializes in representing buyers who are purchasing new construction homes, with a primary focus on the West Oahu region, including Kaulu, Ho'opili, and the surrounding communities. In my 10 years of real estate, I have worked extensively with Gentry Homes and have proudly placed many local families into Gentry-built communities. Since Kaulu by Gentry first opened their doors, I have successfully helped multiple clients purchase there, and each of them have expressed how pleased they were with both the home buying process and the quality of the homes delivered by Gentry. I am here today to express my strong support for the Kaulu residential project amendments presented in Development Permit Application KAL 25010. In today's market, especially in West Oahu, we are seeing that the pricing difference between 140 AMI restricted units and unrestricted market price homes has narrowed significantly. In several cases within Ho'opili, for example, buyers are finding market price homes listed at prices similar to or even lower than Kaulu reserved units. When faced with these options, many buyers understandably question why they should undergo an extensive qualification process, navigate income caps, or accept ownership restrictions when comparable market price homes are available with fewer limitations. Although my team currently and consistently encourages buyers to visit Kaulu, we frequently encounter situations where interested buyers want to pursue a reserve unit but ultimately cannot qualify under the AMI requirements, which forces them to look elsewhere, even when Kaulu may have been their first choice. This dynamic reduces the eligible buyer pool, slows absorption, and creates challenges not only for home buyers, but for the developer. Gentry Homes has demonstrated its commitment to building high-quality workforce housing for Hawaii residents. Their communities are thoughtfully designed, well-planned, and contribute to long-term neighborhood stability. As a real estate professional who works closely with local buyers every day, I believe the amendments in this application will allow Gentry to better meet the real needs of today's home buyers and deliver much-needed housing with unnecessary barriers. For these reasons, I respectfully urge your support for the Kaulu residential project amendments. This adjustment will help align housing availability with true buyer demand and create more opportunities for local families. Mahalo for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you to the testifier. Anyone else wishing to testify?
Excuse me. Chair Higa, excuse me, if I may, I did want to just briefly summarize the comments that were provided.
Please.
The agency comments that were provided, just to enter them into the record. Members did receive copies of the comments from the State of Hawaii Department of Transportation, Office of Hawaiian Affairs, again, that's referenced by Mr. Kang. We also got comments from the Honolulu Police Department, the Board of Water Supply, and the Honolulu Fire Department. Honolulu Police Department had no concerns. Board of Water Supply stated that they do not have a water system serving project area, and that all the potable, non-potable, and fire protection water services are shall be provided by the private water system serving the project area. And the Honolulu Fire Department stated that all applicable codes and standards must be adhered to for this project. So
thank you. Thank you. Any further public testimony in person or online? Okay, proceed with closing today's hearing. Now the authority would like to close the record for the hearing unless the counsel for the applicant would like to request the record be kept open.
The applicant requests that the record be closed at this time.
Okay, the record for the public hearing is now closed. If there are no further comments or discussion, then on behalf of the HCDA authority members and its staff, I thank you for your attendance. A decision-making hearing will be held on Wednesday, January 7th, 2026 at 9 a.m. virtually on Zoom, and the physical meeting site will also be available. This public hearing on the applicant's presentation of its project now stands adjourned. The time is now 10:09 a.m. Members, maybe we'll take a 5-minute break before we roll into our 10 o'clock agenda. So we'll begin at 10:15 a.m. Thank you.